the programme, coming to you live from the Labour Party conference in Liverpool. Now, deepfake videos of Sir Keir Starmer apparently berating his staff were posted online at the start of this conference in a move that underlines the threat posed to UK politics by artificial intelligence. Labour campaigners are being trained to flag false clips circulating on social media, but they're also working on ways of improving their digital campaigning ahead of the next general election. Earlier, I spoke to the tech entrepreneur Tom Adeyoola, co-author of the Startup Scale-Up Review for Rachel Reeves, and Hannah O'Rourke, who's co-founder of the Campaign Lab and has been holding training sessions for campaigners here in Liverpool. And I started by asking Tom what he made of that deep fake of Keir Starmer.
Well, I think we're now at the beginning of the era where we're going to see more and more of this. So it's been previously this element of like creating funny things and funny parodies around leaders, whereas now we're getting to a point where it's going to be the question of like, is it real, is it not real, and how far are the people creating deepfakes able to push the sense that this is actually something that's being said by political leaders. And that's a dangerous line where we're now sort of entering into, and I think was quite a dangerous line for the Slovakia recent elections as well.
Hannah, is there a concern that when we get deepfakes like this coming out, that affects the whole way you've got to campaign on social media?
Yeah, so I think deepfakes are interesting. We obviously have had fake content before. This is not a new problem as such. The scale is the problem. So I think it's now easier to make these. Hobbyists can make these, whereas before you would have had to have more specialist software to do it. So I think the scale is what's changed. I do think, though, there's also another question of like how much algorithms prioritize this content, and that's a deeper question about misinformation, deepfake, fake news, and that's an algorithm question as much as a can we do it or not question. Because actually, like, technology has changed how we campaign again and again over the last 100 years. Even today, we were presenting a timeline of everything that's changed since 2007. Like, so much has changed in terms of how we campaign online. You've had like #MeToo, that's completely changed how we campaign or use Twitter. So I think like this is just another development in what is already quite a kind of big change in our society. So I wouldn't say that it's like completely new. I think it's more the recurrence of an old problem scaled up.
And we'll come back a bit more to that question of how you actually use AI and some of the other new technologies in campaigning in just a moment. But Tom, we've seen these deepfake images. There was Donald Trump, there was the Pope. Some people might look at them and laugh, but I mean, they could actually play quite a significant role in terms of the way voters perceive our politicians.
Yeah, I think sort of following on from Hannah's point, it's about the scale of the ability to create this content now. So, we've been seeing these particular moments, these things which have risen to the surface and that we've all seen and gone, isn't that amazing, that's a deep fake. But it's almost the case of the better it is, the more likely they're to surface, and we're able to counter them. But actually, it's going to be the fact that we're going to be able to scale a huge number of these at a lower level, and there'll be a whole bunch that we won't actually see as a general public, but lots of different groups will see, and it will reinforce their thinking on particular candidates, or actually push them away from the ability to be moved into believing a certain character is a certain way and believes certain set of policies.
And we've already seen Russian bots trying to influence an election, haven't we, Hannah?
Yeah, definitely. Again, like, coordinated bots will become more easy with AI technology, because before you'd sort of program them to say maybe like 5 or 6 things that they'd repeat, whereas now with ChatGPT, you could have infinite things that they could say at any point. But I do think that there are positives to AI in campaigning, and that's certainly something that I would argue. I run quite a few sessions on thinking about how AI can help campaigners, and I think it's very much like we can see this as something that's disempowering and is going to cause lots of problems, or we can think more deeply about the technology we build and how we can use it in a good way.
Well, as you've mentioned it, tell us how you are teaching people here at the conference how they can use AI as part of the campaigns coming up, including, of course, the crucial coming general election campaign.
So I think we would definitely focus on how this can be quite democratizing technology. So where you have a campaign that's smaller and maybe doesn't have as much capacity, using AI tools to help generate content, create first drafts, allow them to do things that they couldn't do before is actually quite empowering. And again, it's how you view technology. You either view technology as a threat or something that's going to take your agency away, or you think about, okay, how do we build this technology? How do we make it ethical? And how do we actually do something with it that's positive for the world? And this is the thing, technology is neither good nor bad. It's about how we use it. And I think that's something that sometimes gets missed in this debate.
Tom, how do you see that? I mean, is it about maybe getting ChatGPT to help you do a first draft of your press release or your online posting, or is it more complex than that?
I think it's more complex, and it enables a huge productivity gain over a lot of different types of jobs that you might do through the campaign process. So the idea generation piece, you can generate a huge number of ideas very quickly, and the human will then sift through and identify which ones work and which ones don't. You can also potentially create synthetic polling groups where you can test ideas against synthetically generated...
A synthetic polling group? Can we believe them?
But I think the point there is that you can then test what you've generated in terms of ideas against that group and try and understand what the likely reaction will be. So they don't need to be real people, but again, it's that aim of how can you speed up the process of campaign generation, creating ideas and messages and getting them out to the people. So that's where I think there's going to be a huge impact from AI, more so than the deep fake end, which is the sort of more sensationalist and the stuff that gets headlines.
Hannah, tell me a bit more about how you see it actually working and whether voters need to be aware of this.
So I think people are going to end up more aware of this because we can see Microsoft embedding this technology, Google embedding this technology. Whether we like it or not, people are going to see this and that it's around, and it will change their day-to-day work and probably how they interact with things. So I think people are inevitably going to see this. I think also there's a huge opportunity as well to think about how we make sure humans are kept in the loop. So usually we use this term human in the loop, which is how do you not just outsource all of human processes to an AI, but how do you build in a human being in the loop and able to either check things or make sure it's okay. And that's really about how do we preserve humanity in some of this, because campaigning is also about humans, it's about people, and we would never want to lose that.
So is there a bit of a risk that the bots, the robots, the technology actually outflanks the humans?
So I think it's more about how we decide to use it. So again, it's whether technology becomes a tool that almost uses you, and in our society we need to be aware of that, or whether we take decisions, government decisions and governance decisions now to stop that happening. But I think a lot of this is down to whether you see this as a tool for agency or you see it as something that's automating human will out of the picture. And there's a few different approaches. I mean, yeah, it's quite a complex thing, obviously.
Tom, what about this idea of micro-messaging? We saw a bit of that, didn't we, during the Brexit campaign, that particular messages were used in particular types of social media to try to reach particular groups of voters.
Yes, I think that will actually become the norm. So this is that point again about AI enabling different messaging and different content at scale. That's the bit that we've got now through generative AI. It can generate messages for different groups. You can put it out there, and that's all about trying to get that extra few percent in terms of trying to shift opinion. So it's, one message versus another might not have the impact you might think, but when we're talking about close elections, where we're talking about close contests, the extra 1 to 2% difference by having a message completely tailored for you and your thinking and your beliefs could have the impact that shift an election.
Hannah, what about going out and knocking on doorsteps? Are we still going to see that, or is that just going to become an outdated mode of campaigning that nobody's going to bother with anymore, particularly as it's so difficult often to get activists out there?
So I think, again, like I run Campaign Lab, which is dedicated to think about campaign innovation, but I actually think with the growth of disinformation, door knocking is going to be more important than ever. Like having a relational contact and being able to talk to somebody on the doorstep and explain to them what Labour's going to do in their communities is really going to be powerful, because human-to-human interaction is probably still way more powerful than 1,000 bots telling you something. And like the moment we surrender the fact that we think that is less powerful is the moment that we give up on like our ability and our political system to handle this change, because actually like it's really important to talk to people. And the relational, again, time after time, lots of studies in the US, lots of academic studies tell you that if you relationally connect to somebody, they are more likely to vote. So like I don't think it's going to like get rid of that kind of campaigning. I think actually that kind of campaigning is probably going to become more important, oddly enough.
Tom, what do you think on that? Are we still going to see people going out and knocking on doors and handing out actual leaflets, bits of paper come the next election?
Yes, absolutely. We're social human beings, and we care about contact with other people, and I think that still is the most powerful thing. I think maybe the thing to worry about is if you start to get messages generated by AI from people you thought were your loved ones, and that part will be really powerful, right? So, and potentially dangerous. So I think the human-to-human contact is going to be key, and I think will always be key for any type of election. And I think the way to then think about the AI piece is that hopefully that automates a lot of the messaging piece away to enable and allow parties to actually spend more time with their constituents and potential voters.
Should voters be a bit more wary of the messages that they receive and what they read? I mean, do we need to educate people a bit more? Apparently the deep fake of Keir Starmer has already been viewed over 1 million times, and hopefully a lot of those people will realise that it's a deep fake and they've just read about it and they're interested, but maybe some might be influenced by it.
Yeah, some might be, but I think going back to your point on education, I think a key principle is critical thinking and making sure that we educate the generation on thinking and questioning everything they view and understanding where it comes from. But with reference to some people might believe it, that might be because they want to believe it. So I think we have to remember that we also have ingrained views and opinions about people. So where we see things that essentially confirm what we want to believe about an individual, we're more likely to believe it. So I think there are undoubtedly going to be people who will believe it, but there are people who are already susceptible to that belief.
Hannah, do you need to do more as a party to help voters to spot when they're being fooled by robots or artificial intelligence or some other clever device?
So I think that's a complicated question. I do think, though, voters aren't stupid. So I think also this is a deeper political problem which we have, which is that people don't trust politicians, and actually that effort to repair trust, rebuild trust, that isn't going to be built by one bot interaction. It's not going to be built by one fake thing. It's actually like, are your community representatives there? Do they show up for you, and do they deliver for you? And that's all stuff that happens in the real world that we can control and the Labour Party can control and will show up for them about. So I think like that's the bit that we should be focusing on, which is being good representatives for people and building back that trust, because trust isn't built in one interaction. Trust is like 1,000 interactions, and it's based on concrete results, and it's based on what we actually can do. So I think again this ties into this broader point about technology, which is people see technology as this thing that's going to shift everything or be a shortcut to everything, and no, actually it's about augmenting processes we already do and making us better at what we know works.
Well, that was Hannah O'Rourke, co-founder of the Campaign Lab, talking to me along with Tom Adeyoola, who is co-author of the Startup Scale-Up Review for Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, talking to me there about the risks and potential benefits of artificial intelligence in digital campaigning, which will no doubt play a huge role in the coming general election. You're listening to Carole Walker on Times Radio.